Okay. Welcome everyone. Today we are going to go through a classical Jivamukti sequence called Seat of Isis. This sequence might seem straightforward at first, but I have a whole lot to say about it. I hope that I can even do a thimbleful of justice to this beautiful miniature sequence. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through the sequence as it's presented in the classical Jivamukti, the book, and the two main video classes that we have from Sharon and David. And then I'd like to talk a little bit more about some parts of the sequence, some ways to modify, and some things to think about while we're practicing the sequence. But first, together, let's go through it so that at least we're all on a similar page. So, standing in Tadasana with feet together. We're going to stretch the right leg forward with the right foot pointed and the right big toe just barely touching the floor. So I can just feel that the floor is there. Then I'm going to flex the ankle. Now I'm not moving my leg. I'm going to point the toes, and when I point the toes, the big toe should again just barely touch the floor, so that so I know I haven't moved my leg in space. And then as I exhale, I'm going to flex. Stand up really straight and tall. Don't lean back. Inhale, point. Exhale, flex. Inhale, point the foot. And now we're going to keep the ankle part pointed, but we're going to pull the toes back. And I'm going to try to spread the toes wide. Then we're going to step down onto the ball of the right foot, lifting the left heel up. Try to have both heels lifting as high as you can, and do your best to even out the weight between the front and the back foot, even though most of us will naturally put a little bit more weight in the back. Try to make it even. As you exhale, bend your knees, and simultaneously, as you bend, reach the arms forward to shoulder height, palms facing up. Inhaling, extend the legs, turn the palms over, and bring the arms alongside the body. So those actions all happen simultaneously. Exhale, bend knees, reach arms forward, palms face up. Inhale, extend legs, arms alongside the body. Exhale, bend knees, reach arms forward. Inhale, extend legs, arms alongside the body. Exhale, lower the left heel or the back heel down. Inhale, bend the right knee into the chest. Give it a squeeze with both hands. Exhale, feet and legs together. Then extend the opposite leg forward. Foot is pointed, big toe just barely grazing the floor. Standing up straight and tall, shoulders over the waist and gaze straight ahead of you. Try not to look down. Spread the fingers, stretch the arms. As you exhale, flex the left foot. Inhale, point. Exhale, flex. Inhale, point. Exhale, flex. Inhale, point. Now exhale, just curl the toes back. So the ankle is pointed, the toes are flexing back. I'm trying to spread my toes. It doesn't matter how far they spread. It's more of the action of attempting to spread them. And then step down onto the ball of the left foot as you lift the right heel up. Again, try to balance the weight from side to side, but also front to back. And then keeping the heels lifting, exhale, bend the knees, reach the arms forward, palms of hands face up. Inhale, extend the legs, bring the arms alongside the body. Exhale, bend knees, turn palms, reach arms forward, shoulder height. Inhale, extend legs, bring arms alongside body. Exhale, bend and reach forward. Inhale, extend. Last one on this side. Exhale, bend. And inhale, extend. Exhale, lower the right heel down or the back heel. Bend the left knee into the chest and give it a squeeze. Exhale, feet together, Tadasana. So, let's talk about it, shall we? One thing that I love about this sequence is that it moves every single joint. Well, you know, the foot is a little bit more complicated, but just bear with me with this thought. It moves every joint of the lower half of the body, plus the shoulders, in flexion and extension. So we get the toes flexing and extending. We get the ankle flexing and extending. We get the knees flexing and extending. We get the hips flexing and extending. We also get the shoulders too, but put that aside for a second. So it's a wonderful and very complete experience of moving at each of those parts, right? And if this goes over your head for now, that's okay. You'll learn more as you study more anatomy, but it also involves open chain movements as well as closed chain movements, which is interesting if you're a big anatomy geek like me. If that's not interesting to you yet, just put it in the filing cabinet for later. Let's talk about it another time. Now, the interesting thing about having this forced arch position in the foot is that what happens is it helps us to contract muscles along the front of the leg and along the back of the leg. Let's do an experiment together. When you flex, if you want to be technical, when you dorsiflex the ankle, can you feel how the muscles on the front of the leg, below the knee and above the knee, they're contracted, they're firm, they're active? When you plantar flex, or when you point the foot, you feel how the calf and the back of the leg is active. Or you can even just see it on me, even if you can't feel it in your body just yet. Remember, just because you can't feel something doesn't mean it's not happening. Sometimes it's just a matter of awareness and connection and practice. So when we do a bit of both, in other words, when we keep the ankle plantar flexed or pointed and pull the toes back or dorsiflex them, then look, I have a little bit of action both on the front and the back of the leg. And then if I can manage to balance the energy of the leg from the inside to the outside, then I should also have some awareness on both sides of the leg as well. Now that's a little harder. Most of us will tend to either kind of wing the foot out a little bit, which makes my outer leg more contracted, or some of us tend to be a little weaker on that side, so the inside wants to take over. So actually, spreading the toes and trying to find an even distribution of weight from the big toe to the little toe is key to enlivening both sides of the leg. Now, if and when that happens successfully, then we've got action on the front of the leg, the back of the leg, the inside, the outside of the leg. It's like all the angles of the leg are alive. It's alive, right? We've woken up that part of the body. Now, in terms of distributing the weight on the ball of the foot, of course, it's good to go back to some of our explorations in Tadasana and in foot anatomy as it relates to asana in general. But just quickly, if that's something that eludes your physical experience, one way to sort of wake up that area of the body is to take a block and to put the block under the ball of the foot. So I'm trying to get the knuckle of the big toe and the knuckle of the pinky toe, both on the block at once, which means I'm actually going to hinge my heel just a little out to the side. So I'm a little turned in there. And then I can just roll back and forth from the outer to the inner. I'm rolling from the pinky knuckle to the big toe knuckle to the pinky knuckle to the big toe knuckle. And then try to find center. Try to feel the big toe and the pinky toe simultaneously, and then lift all 5 toes up and back like you're trying to pull the toenails back towards the shin or back towards the lower leg. And then even if you just take a break between sides and place both feet on the floor equally, hopefully you can feel the foot that we worked on, you can feel that ridge of knuckles. And even flat-footed, maybe you can find more of an even balance between the outer and inner foot. Then the next step might be to, with both feet in the same plane, might be to try to find that balance between the inner and outer foot as you lift. So we can even do some heel raises symmetrically in order to start to feel that action. And if the balance is very tricky, or if the ankles are a little bit on the weaker side, it can actually be really helpful to do symmetrical, either feet together or they can be a bit apart. But for me, feet together help me to feel where my feet are. And then either with support or not, slow heel raises, slow ascent and slow descent to help build strength in the arches of the feet, the ankles, to help build awareness so that I can really feel my feet, right? I mean, we have more awareness of our hands because we're more consciously using them all the time. But if we consciously use our feet more often, we'll build more awareness. So let's also look at, and if the balance is tricky for you in the beginning, or if for some reason you have any counterindication, any reason you might not be able to go up onto your toes like that, you can also do the sequence with flat feet. Sometimes I do this with folks who, maybe they're not allowed to go up on toes yet because of a injury or a condition, or sometimes with folks who have much more weak ankles, or older folks who might have a little harder time with the balance. So look, we'll just do it on one side, but look, you can, step your one foot forward, work on balancing front to back and side to side, and then look, we can bend just stop before the heels lift up and extend, and bend and extend, just like that. Bend and extend. And if it's a circumstance where you're building towards lifting the heels up, great, but it could just be wonderful just as it is without the heels lifting if there's a counterindication, something like that. So I very much like to build up some of that balance and strength by doing any combination of heel raises, 2 at a time, sometimes doing lift, bend, extend, down, lift, bend, extend, down. You can do a combination, right? Bend the knees, lift the heels, extend the legs, place the heels down. You can go in the reverse order. This can all help bring more mobility and strength to those parts of the body. Then, most people will put more weight on the back foot. It's pretty natural to do so. So when you're sequencing it in and amongst other sequences, you want to keep that in mind. even though, of course, ideally you want to be perfectly balanced between both feet, most people will hang back in their back foot. So you just want to keep that in mind as you are sequencing, is that the back leg will likely be working more, even if it's intended to be a symmetrical experience. Another thing to look out for is that you want the head, shoulders, hips to stay vertical. It can be very tempting to, as you're reaching forward, to lean forward. You want to prevent that from happening and just work on keeping the upper body vertical as you move through the sequence. One way to help bring about this feeling is we can actually practice with a block on the head. Now, some heads are rounder than others, so if you're not able to do it, it's not a personal failing. It just might be that your head is shaped a little differently, but it's one way to bring about an interesting feeling, is to practice that verticality of the upper body and to not let it go into that forward bend, right? So that can be one way to awaken that particular aspect of the sequence in you or in your students. Now, if you're keeping the upper body truly vertical, then you probably won't. It's possible to go further down. So I don't want to say you can't go further down. You certainly can. As you can see, it's certainly possible. But you don't need to bend the knees more than about 90 degrees. That's about it. You don't need to go to your deepest knee flexion. 90 is best. Just think 90 degrees bend. Okay? Now, sometimes people struggle to remember the breath, which is understandable because for whatever reason it seems a little counterintuitive to our brains. But according to Jivamukti sequencing, downward movements, exhaling, upward movements, inhaling, but also, here's the way that I remember when I'm teaching it. I think of the movement of the arms as mimicking the movement of the diaphragm on the breath. So as we're exhaling, the diaphragm is moving up as the arms are moving up. As we're inhaling, the diaphragm is moving down and the arms are moving down. So I think about the diaphragmatic movement when I'm teaching, but that's just the way that helps me remember. If it's simpler and more helpful to just remember that downward movements are exhale, upward movements are generally inhale, then keep it that way. So you want to link breath and movement together in a vinyasa. Now, it's hard to communicate that, right, to our students. And often one part of the movement, like we might pay more attention to down, and then up might be kind of like stilted, or it might be like they're like, well, they've done the movement, so actually we do that a lot of times in asana, where coming out of the movement doesn't seem as important to us as going in. So try practicing this sequence with a true samavriti or even ujjayi breathing, meaning exhale 2, 3, 4, inhale 2, 3, 4, meaning you don't complete the movement. You don't come to that final moment until 4 in either direction. And trust me, if you slow it down that way, consciously in both directions, trust me, it's much more enlivening to the whole body and the whole nervous system, because it doesn't do very much for us to just kind of go from position to position. It loses something. So something to pay attention to. Or maybe the opposite is happening, right? Maybe the downward movement is the throwaway movement. But pay attention to that and try to make the movements as even as we're trying to make the breath using Ujjayi. Another way to kind of bring about a feeling in this sequence that can be brought about by the pairing of Ujjayi and the movement, just as I was just saying. But here's another sort of image that maybe will help bring about a similar idea in the body, okay? So instead of just like kind of moving the muscles and bones around, the image is to sort of imagine that you're moving like through water, right? You know how when you try to move your arm through water, there's a bit of resistance. So if I'm moving through water, it means as I'm reaching my arms up, I'm actually imagining that I'm pressing up against something. And then as I'm moving my arms down, I'm not just moving them down, I'm actually pressing against some imaginary resistance. So create that image in your mind, like either of moving through a different substance or of just simply making the movement stronger and more intentional in both directions. It can be interesting. One time, I remember taking a class long ago where it's hard to do on the downward movement, but certainly on the upward movement, holding a couple of blocks can help give us that sense of resistance, right? And then when you take the blocks away, you can kind of try to bring that same sense of weightiness into the movement itself. So many things to say about this sequence. So many nuances to this beautiful sequence. Oh, one thing about this sequence that I think goes unnoticed a lot of times is that it's also a great preparation for our vestibular system, for the system that helps us stay balanced in space. So as we move the head up and down, we're kind of calibrating our internal mechanism of equilibrium, which is going to make subsequent standing asanas more steady for most of us.